Hola, mi gente. Hello, everyone. My name is Brigette Lugo. I'm your sports editor for SAC Sidelines, as well as your SomosGenteLA editor. And I have with me today ladies of Latinx Surf Club. Hello, ladies. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
Hello.
So we have Giselle, and we have Vanessa, and Dr. Cassie. You guys can explain to our audience a little bit about your position within the club.
Our positions, it's kind of formal and informal, but we've all slowly adopted different roles based off of what we're personally really passionate about and also kind of what we do in our professional careers. But all three of us have roots in teaching. So in this movement, we're all kind of the teachers and the mama bears of it. But I lead a lot of the marketing between us. I make our little flyers that we post on Instagram. I come with them with ideas. I'm like, what if we do this to get the word out and for new people to get exposed to our movement? And I'm also really savvy with, just stuff on the computer. So I'm designing our website and just different things. And I run the Instagram account as well. So kind of like community engagement and recruitment and marketing. There's no real roles. We just kind of figure it out as we go. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Vanessa?
I'm the surf coach, so like the main surf instructor, and yeah, just a free surfer.
You help a lot with the media content. You're being
I got a lot going on. I run the Latinx Surf Club Instagram. That's me, and I try to post up on there like every day. That's like fun, inspirational, showing brown girls surfing, showing people surfing from different parts of Latin America, friends in Puerto Rico, people in Costa Rica, just trying to promote Latinos surfing.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, I know. I mean, my own personal Instagram and Facebook has a huge following, but that's just over like 20 plus years of surfing here in Orange County and Newport Beach. So I'm a PE teacher as well, degree in kinesiology. So like I became a PE teacher with every intention of being a surf coach. So when it didn't really happen, as far as like getting a job at like one of the local high schools here, I do work at a local high school here, but not coaching. It's nice to be able to do what I've always wanted to do, which is coach surfing. So this is finding my way to do it.
But I'm also more on the research end of the group. I wrote my dissertation on Mexican American surfers, and so I think I provide that kind of context that gives it a different aspect and really pushes the representation angle. I have a lot of connections within the outdoor industry, and so through my Instagram as well, I'm constantly promoting our group and also just connecting with other people. So I guess you can kind of say, I forget what the official title that we gave me besides research and policy, but I do a lot of building rapport, which is what I do in my day jobs. So just like connecting the dots with different folks and people from my dissertation that were voiced interest in some kind of a club or organization. I stay in contact with them. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of the point person when it comes to maybe reaching out to like other folks that I know in the field. So Rhonda, for example, her and we're pretty close. So I talk to her a lot and, just kind of connecting everybody together in a sense. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for that. Well, speaking about the club specifically and how it was created, what I've read is that Giselle and Vanessa were sharing a pizza, and that's how the idea came about. And now, the way you guys connected, were you both working at the same school, or did you know each other prior from surfing, or how did this work?
No, so I I learned to surf pretty much on my own. My sister and I moved to Venice later I think I was like 25 years old. And decided we got the crazy idea then. That was about the same time that Instagram was starting to pop up. And, with Instagram, it's a form of connecting with people that are like you, but maybe you wouldn't have met them, through the normal things in life. My sister sent me Vanessa's account. As she mentioned, she has a lot of followers from just being a local at Blackies. And we were kind of like, I think this girl's Latina. Like, I've never seen a Latina surf, but she's got brown skin like me, maybe. And so I followed her for a while, and one day she posted a meme of Jaime Escalante from the movie Stand and Deliver, and it said like ganas, do it with ganas. And right away, like, you just feel in your soul, like, oh my God, she is Latina. And she watches a movie. It's a movie that inspired me to become a teacher. And so I slid into her DMs and was like, oh my God, I love that movie. That movie inspired me to become a teacher. And she replied right away. She's so good with just being connected to the community that she's built online and bringing women and women of color together through the ocean. And so I was fangirling because she replied to me, and it didn't take too long for us to make a date, a surf date. I think we went to Doho, and it was almost like I had already known her, and as if we'd spent tons of years together. There was no like weirdness. We just started surfing, and she was amazing and I sucked, but she's always been somebody that kind of helps me as we go. And I think that's when we went to get pizza and just had this really magical opening in a conversation. It always happens after you surf, right? Like, you surf and you've had this experience. I don't know if it's the minerals in the water, but you come out and like your soul almost opens up, and you just kind of like tell the people around you what you want to do with your life, what's going on with your life. And that was why when we went to get pizza, Vanessa and I just opened up about what our dreams were when it came to surfing. And I think that was probably the beginning of Courage Camps.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, let's do this. Like, let's, you know, I just thought it was a fun idea to just have like some sort of club where people get together. But Giselle wanted to take it a step further with Courage Camps. And, you know, I was like, I'll be your coach, man. Put me in. Like, I will totally help, you know? And so that's kind of how it did start. And then we met Cassie, and it was just like, okay, now there's like 3 of us. And I feel like the power of 3 is, you know, that triangle effect. it just worked, you know, and it flowed, and everybody kind of did have that that vision of just wanting to help the community. And that's really the root of it all.
Yeah, and I was reading about Cassie, your dissertation, and I feel that, you know, once you met them two, it just all came together, right? Because calling out the lack of inclusivity within white male-dominated sports, and then creating this community, this opportunity for females that are often like underrepresented within these sports, like with surfing, is something I would have never connected Latinx culture to. So what was your motivation to write that, your dissertation on that specifically?
So I had a colleague that was just helping me through a weird period of my graduate school experience. I had just completed my comprehensive exams, and I didn't know what I wanted to do because nobody studied sports in my field. So I had to really build this case for my study to begin with. And so that was hard for me because a lot of people were sort of downplaying the significance. Yeah, they could say, oh, surfing is a white sport, or it presents itself as a white sport, but like, what's the story there? And at that time, I didn't really have a story yet because I hadn't really dug into it myself. Although I identify as Mexican American, I've had a very different experience than most because my family is very assimilated. And I've also had this sort of, you know, disconnect with my culture because I understand that I present a certain way, and that means that I have a certain level of privilege. And so I was actually afraid to do a study about race. I've done mostly studies about gender, sex, and sexuality, but race for me personally was something that I hadn't really dug into because my experience was met with a lot of, not discrimination, but a lot of pushback from the community. Certain people in the community, I had experienced pushback. And so that made me feel like my voice wasn't the one that needed to be amplified. But I had met a colleague, and he basically reassured me that, no, this is a story that needs to be told, and you could tell it. Like, you have an opportunity to tell this story. And I actually know a lot of people that grew up surfing and that come from these little enclaves, these little Mexican communities across the coast. And so really it was him and his recommendation for me to read this book about a man who grew up in East LA, just like just like our stories. And so I contacted the author of the book, and I asked if he could do a meeting with me. And so we met, and it was kind of similar to what these two gals are saying, is he just kind of instantly took me in, and he really affirmed some insecurities that I had too. And we talked about identity, and we talked about race, and we talked about surfing, of course. His name is Jack Lopez. And I feel like I can't really say that I necessarily came up with this idea by myself, because his book really inspired me to look into this issue further And so through his guidance and the guidance of another colleague, I kind of just put this project together, to be honest. I did it in the matter of like almost, I want to say like a weekend. Like I had to decide on what I was going to do before I left for California because my funding was all up. And I was actually debating on even staying in academia. I had already had my master's at that point. So I just figured I could leave if I wanted to. And his phone call really changed and altered my path. His energy, his mentorship just put me on this completely different path. And I kind of did the same thing that if you ever hear Rhonda's story about Googling like she would Google like Black girls surfing. And that was how she kind of also got the idea for starting an organization or for trying to create an organization that touches on diversity. I found myself kind of doing the same thing too. I was trying to find other Latinos that surf and, you know, I would find people here and there, but of course, just because something doesn't exist on the internet doesn't mean that we don't exist in real life. And so once I started to connect with everybody and I met these two, I mean, Vanessa introduced me to tons of people because like Giselle said, she's highly connected to these different groups. And so through her, I was able to kind of snowball sample into meeting other people. And then once I just kept meeting more and more people, it's like you just ask other people, hey, do you have any friends or do you know of any other? And before you knew it, I mean, I had to stop the data collection process because it was getting out of control. Each interview ended up being like 3 hours long. And it was supposed to just be 30 minutes, but you could see that there was a need. I could feel in people's responses that this was something that they had been waiting for somebody to come along and maybe piece together. Like I kept getting that response from people is that, yeah, you know, it's like every time I open up a magazine, I don't see this representation. I feel like people don't realize that this is something that like Latinos are doing. And you know, a lot of them some were young, some were old. Like there was a really big difference in even the age range. And so it was cool to talk to people who surfed in the 60s and the 70s and experienced overt racism in the water versus people now who experience the covert form of racism that we're all more familiar with, right? This colorblind racism that you hear all the time, which is harder to identify, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So it ended up being very life-changing, altering for myself. I was very pleased with the outcome. Obviously, I got to meet these two, and now we're able to create this community and to move forward with the vision that we have. And on top of that, I get to write about what I found, and I get to see that work be published, and it gets out there. And like I mentioned, I hate that you have to have research in order for people to take these causes more seriously, because again, we know, like if as a person of color, as a queer person, as a woman, you know that sexism, racism, all of these isms exist. And it's very frustrating that this literature has to exist to give it this realness factor, you know, but right. I'm glad that I have that. And I can say, based off of my experience as a researcher, that this is what is happening. I can confidently say that now. And that took me time too, to really fit into this academic world, because sports is taken very seriously in academia. It's just not as widespread yet, but there are people out there that are interested in this type of work and that look at sports critically. And so I'm very, you know, happy to be able to add to that body of knowledge and to have this friendship with these two. It's like icing on the cake after you become a doctor. Like after everything I had to finish, like there were definitely times where I didn't want to finish, but then I was just sitting on this data. I'm just sitting on all these stories, and I had to finish it for them. It wasn't about me anymore, about my troubles or whatever I was experiencing or my worries about the job market. It wasn't about me. It was about all these great, wonderful people that I've met and that I still stay connected to. So, you know, it became larger than itself, which is, I don't know how many people can say that, but it's really rad that was my journey in the end.
That's awesome, because I like that you recognize that oftentimes we have to go through academia in order to present certain types of information about marginalized communities, but you use that privilege to be able to communicate that and show its importance, that at least that was like a tool to get that out there, which is in a way unfortunate, but it's also lucky for the rest of us, right? That we're like, wow, there's someone in academia speaking with us, speaking for us, etc. So I appreciate that. So you're talking about, you know, Latinx Surf Club, you all meet, you start meeting other like-minded surfers, including them having meetups, right? And then comes the creation of of the Courage Camps? And how long after? Because I know that you guys started in 2018.
It was actually 2017.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like the Facebook page was created in October, and I think Giselle started Courage Camps in like November, and so like everything just was like boom, boom, boom.
Okay.
Like, it was really quick.
And Courage Camps came about how did you find younger kids, kind of recruit them in to say, hey, you have the opportunity to do this and it's free? And you tell us a little bit more about the background of Courage Camps.
I feel like it all started that day at Pizza Port. You know, Giselle wanted to do Courage Camps, not only with surfing, we've talked about this before, just with like, she does jiu-jitsu and boxing and other things like that, but just different activities, physical activities, and all three of us like to work out, you know, or like to be physical, you know, to empower Latino people. So it's like a lot of times I feel like there's, you know, it's like just promoting health, promoting fitness, and promoting having courage. But I don't know, go ahead, Giselle, if you want to talk more on that. But she definitely, yeah.
How did you find these kids? I saw the picture of the kids from Long Beach.
How'd you find the kids, Giselle?
I found the kids. The families and the children found us, honestly. So after Pizza Port, when we talked about our dream and about starting a community, not only for the adults who surf already, which is kind of a reflection of what Cassie found and all the people she found, we wanted a way for us to already give back. So they kind of started together, like this community, and also a way for the community to give back, which is to make the next generation of surfers. And it's already been kind of previewed. I want to make the next generation of, you know, jiu-jitsu practitioners and boxing, and Cassie also does CrossFit and weightlifting like crazy. So these sports that in our families, like for me growing up, my family was like study, get to college, get a good job. Nothing outside of that matters. And so I did do that. And at 25 years old, I found myself completely depressed, to be honest, and my career was not going where I wanted it to. And then I found surfing and I found boxing, and I found this total freedom and release. So the two movements kind of started together. And Courage Camps, Vanessa had somebody who came to stay at that garage right there as an Airbnb guest. And I had a friend from my jiu-jitsu class who was like, I've always wanted to learn to surf. I've never known anyone who could take me. And so I sent Vanessa a text and I was like, hey, I have this guy who wants to go. And she's like, oh my God, I have this girl who wants to go. And the next day we went, and Vanessa took them in the water and I stayed on the shore taking pictures. I think I took maybe like 10 pictures that day, and we posted them online. And just like, we already had the name Courage Camps. So we put hashtag Courage Camps, and people were like, what is this? Like, you didn't tell me you were doing this. Like, I want to be part of the next one. So then the three of us started talking and was like, all right, let's do a second one and just invite people. Again, I made a little flyer on my iPad, put it online, hashtag Courage Camps, and more people came. And we made another one. So many people came to the third or fourth one that at some point, like, Cassie was like finding people on the beach who were looking for us. I was standing on the shore being like, grab that surfboard, Vanessa's over there. And Vanessa was in the water with like 10 people just rotating on one foamy surfboard. And then parents started kind of sharing that flyer and asking us when we were doing the next one. And so that's kind of how they have found us, just through social media, through the pictures that we take. The pictures are really powerful because it shows that little moment when somebody is doubting themselves and all of a sudden they're able to do something that they didn't even think was for them, for our people. Like they're flying, they're flowing, they're feeling that freedom that the ocean can give you. And so honestly, through my just taking pictures and sharing them online, people saw that there was something really special there. And especially when the people in those pictures look like them.
What have you found that's the most rewarding of the inclusivity that you have all provided for this community? Personally, like, how has it felt for you to know that you're providing this and assisting as well? Because you provide some of the, like, the wetsuits, the surfboards, etc., right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, so many favorite families and stories, and I want Vanessa to answer this question too, because she actually gets the privilege of being that coach in the water. But like for me, I always say it's being the people that we needed when we were little and didn't necessarily have. So I want to give my parents, my family, all the credit for everything that they taught me. But there was a little bit of a gap, right? Like especially being a Latina and navigating a world without being able to ask your parents for some pieces of advice, like worlds they don't know. My parents stopped being able to help me with my homework after 3rd grade. Like I still remember sitting at my kitchen table, my mom being like, Mija, I don't know how to do this. So we navigate so much of the world alone. And we're trying to make sure that little boys and little girls from our community don't feel alone, especially those that are curious about surfing. So there was a couple of moms that came to one of our camps, and at the end, like it was big, someone always makes me cry, but at the end we all came together and we're just relaxing, like something we never do as Latinos, relaxing on a beach. And they were like, we just want to tell you girls, we're just so happy our daughters got to meet women like you, women that look like them, that are strong, that just do amazing things in life. And we just wish we had that when we were little. Of course, I start crying. So it's, for me, it's this fulfillment of, somebody I didn't have, a role model I didn't have growing up. And for a long time, it made me think that there were certain pieces of this world that weren't for me.
I don't know. Like I said, I think all 3 of us had very different upbringings. My real father's from Puerto Rico, and he passed away when I was 3. He was a PE teacher in downtown LA, and he was friends with my stepfather, who's also a PE teacher from the island of Trinidad. So I was raised with very athletic men in my family. And I'm kind of like a daddy's little girl. My stepfather used to take me water skiing from as long as I can remember. I played every sport under the sun, so much that I became a PE teacher. So I just wanted to be like my dad. My role model was my dad. He was the one who I looked up to because he was so athletic and just, he looked like he had a blast. Like I envied him. I thought like, oh man, I want to be like him when I grow up. I want to have fun and go out on the weekends and play soccer. And like, he was always playing. And so he always kind of told me that like being athletic is like a privilege, and you should always take advantage of that. And if you can pass that on to the kids, then you should. And when I was a little girl, he would invite his kids that did well in PE, that got like straight A's, like the best students from every class. He would take them water skiing at the end of the year, bring them out to our house. My mom would cook. We'd have huge parties for all these kids, and they'd get to go out on the boat, and my dad would teach them how to water ski, which was something none of these kids knew how to do. And so I think he was just such a big example to me. And I just, even to this day, I feel like I became him as an adult. Like, so he hears that I take kids out to the beach and that we're taking people surfing, and he loves it. He's like, oh, it's just kind of like when you were kids and we would do that with the kids from downtown LA. And I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing, Dad, except for we're taking them surfing and there's no boats involved. I did my high school senior project on women who surf and the history of surfing. So I always wanted to dig deeper into history, and seeing that surfing is from, originally Peru and then West Africa and then the Polynesian Islands was very eye-opening. And so I think educating people is important. I work at an international surfing museum as well on the weekend, and that's part of what I do, is show people like, hey, this is where surfing really came from. And here's the evidence. Here's the facts. Yeah.
How about yourself, Cassie? What's been the most rewarding?
Definitely the community aspect of it, because that was something that I came in originally and wanted to really create, like I said, not necessarily create, but be like a bridge for. And also I work with incarcerated youth. So obviously I have a special place in my heart for people that don't have the same opportunities as others. And so when we were putting this club together, I share a lot with my students. They know a lot about me because I have nothing to hide. So they have been some of my biggest supporters when it comes to this group. And I think about them a lot in terms of how different their lives could have been if they had found these spaces where they felt like they belonged. Because a lot of what I found with doing the dissertation and talking to people is that they felt like they didn't belong in surfing, and that they didn't belong in their communities either, because they were straddling these two worlds. And so there was a really big theme of belonging and being on this journey of searching for others that would either make them feel that way, or creating something within the surfing world that would make them feel like they were accepted. And so there was this element of acceptance and belonging, and also access, which is something that we provide, community. And so whenever I'm doing these events, obviously seeing the little girls and the little boys, the kids, you just see them reacting to us being out there with them, and the parents, the conversations with the parents. Yeah, it just sort of like brings it all together. And I can't help but think that I would love for the day that some of my students get to experience that joy. And that was something that when I was interviewing Giselle during the dissertation, she talked about like a joy deficit within the Latinx community. And I feel that so much with my students. And I teach my students a lot about CrossFit because they're just curious and they want to know what I do all the time. I've found that they respond really well to doing something that they never thought they could do, because everybody just thinks of them as gangsters. And guess what? They've become the thing that everybody thought that they'd be. When I first talked about my project with surfing, they laughed at me. They were like, Mexicans don't surf. And I said, guess what they do? So, you know, it's also about them. It's really about them too, because I want them to see that not only am I being resilient and pushing against their stereotypes, but, you know, we're pushing against so much in the world. And I want to show them that you can be any of these things. I know how they get funneled into the prison system. And so it's like, I wish that maybe they could have grasped onto something else, not just school, because I don't think that school is always the answer necessarily, because a lot of times schools are where these kids actually get funneled into the prison. I don't know if you're like familiar with the school to prison pipeline, but once I started to learn about that, I started to see and understand how even school systems push out these kids. And so it's frustrating for me, because for me personally, being an athlete and being driven in that way has prevented me from, you know, going down other paths in my life. And so a lot of times I just wonder to myself, how different would their lives have been if they could have gotten involved in something that was positive and still reflected themselves or reflected an aspect of the Latinx community, right? And so I talk to them a lot about hiking, just everything in general, being healthy, walking. I'll tell them, you guys could do CrossFit anywhere. You could do push-ups anywhere, pull-ups anywhere. They make fun of me all the time, but I'm like, you guys could seriously still be who you want to be, embody this identity or whatever this thing you're going through right now. I talk to them about masculinity all the time, toxic masculinity. They ask me questions like, how could I be a better man? I mean, they ask me so much. They're so curious about the world. And so I can't help but wonder how different their lives could have been if they would have found something like what we're trying to create. Maybe surfing would lead to something else, but I just think that there needs to be more opportunity. There's not enough opportunity, in my opinion, for these communities, for these, I don't want to say at risk, but for these underrepresented communities. There's just not enough. There aren't enough people out there that are attempting to steer some of these kids into a different path. And it's just too much, we give too much, not credit, but as a society, we believe that our education system is going to quote unquote fix these issues. And a lot of times it's within those spaces that more problems are created. And so, you know, obviously I take issue with some of that, and my solution to that is trying to create this community that we're doing.
I know for a fact, I didn't think I could ever box. And no, I don't spar, but I definitely train. So that's part of my mental health regimen as well. So I wanted to know, I know that surfing definitely provides that for yourselves, for anyone also who is an avid surfer, being out in the ocean, like you said, the moments of clarity, etc. With this stay-home order, how has that affected yourselves personally, and how have you found coping and outlets besides surfing when the beaches were shut down, etc.?
It's been so hard because, like you said, it's my way to re-energize and release and to balance out. I think what you could tell is all of us have a lot of different things going on. Courage Camps and Latinx Surf Club is entirely a passion project for us. We do it because we want to and we love it, and we want to leave a better future in the ocean for our people. So I can't train jiu-jitsu. Physical contact is not allowed, and gyms are closed, and they will be for a long time. And surfing, it wasn't open for a while, so I'm leaning on my imagination, like 5-year-old Giselle. Thankfully, I've learned a lot. Like, I'm somebody who knew nothing about working out or nutrition. I've learned a lot in the past 5 years that I've worked in the field. And so I have like, I'll show you a little basket full of just little trinkets, things that I've been working out with at home. And I go in my backyard and I just think of weird moves that are related to jiu-jitsu or surfing. Our gym is offering Zoom classes, so we've been able to do that. But for me, I think the biggest thing is just we have to be inside and we have to be at home, and we don't have the same access that we do. Just get creative. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been keeping it extra weird. I think the other day I was working out, drinking tea, listening to Beyonce's Lemonade CD. So I keep it weird. And then I'm just going to embrace that weirdness. And I know that the ocean, that first paddle out, is going to feel even sweeter once I get to do it.
Absolutely. I agree with the keeping it weird part, because I've definitely been keeping it weird. And Vanessa, you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, you're a mother as well.
I have an 8-year-old son.
So how has this been for yourself and for him? This is a lot of change. And how have you guys been coping with it?
I think because I am a teacher, it's been fine. I actually enjoy being his teacher. I love homeschooling him, and I think he thrives on, like, he's a smart kid and he likes to learn. So it hasn't been, you know, the hardest part for him was maybe missing his friends, but we've already started to extend our circle. And so he's having play dates again with, like, you know, his best friend. And fortunately for me, I live like 2 miles away from Newport Beach, and our beach here has never closed for surfing. So I've been surfing this entire time. And I usually work 7 days a week, Monday through Friday at the high school, and then Saturday as an ambassador of the city of Huntington Beach. And then on Sunday, running the International Surfing Museum. So for me, this was a much needed break.
Wow.
And I have embraced it. And I feel like I've like lost 10 pounds from surfing every day. And I honestly feel amazing.
And Cassie, yourself as a busy body as well, like literally busy body. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've been like using that as coping skill, just like.
I'm just like squeezing, you know, trying to flip. No, I'm just kidding. Same thing, my boxing gym is closed, which broke my heart because I started boxing about a year ago too. And I don't surf as much as these gals, actually. I've kind of moved a bit away from surfing. Just, I really wanted to focus on boxing. It's been a thing I've wanted to do. My grandpa was a boxer, like an amateur boxer. So I had this thing where after I did the dissertation, I said, boxing and mental health, those are the 2 things I'm doing, which thankfully exercise and pushing yourself and doing things that are very constantly changed. That's a CrossFit way too. So I do a little bit of CrossFit mixed with bodybuilding, mixed with boxing. It's very interesting. Luckily, my partner is, she's getting her master's in kinesiology. So she does a lot of my programming. She has to put up with me, bless her heart. But we've been training together. So I got the quarantine bay thing down. It actually hasn't been too bad. We, you know, energy level for me the first month was terrible. I was just going crazy, scared, worried about my students, worried about my parents, worried, just like everyone else, you know, the worry, the fear. We were in a long distance relationship, so now all of a sudden we're spending all this time together, which was great, but also we had to work through a lot of things. So I would say that the first month was kind of uneasy. I was really like dying to just go swimming, go for a run, do something. Like I just needed to get outside. But, you know, I just started to read, take this time, like Vanessa said. My life was so crazy prior to COVID. I was probably working like 80 hours a week. I don't know how I was doing it. I just was. And it was, my body was breaking down. I had all these injuries, but I didn't want to stop. I was like, definitely unhealthy behaviors were happening with me. I needed a break. And so it was actually good too. Like it forced me to rethink my approach to fitness again, which I feel I'm always doing. And so, you know, my students were like, how are you going to survive without the gym? And it's like, it's a good time to just pause. And I am surviving. I have my days where I miss my boxing gym because it's my community. It's where I feel accepted. It's where I spend a lot of my time because, like I said, I am in a long distance relationship. And so it provides that comfort and, you know, consistency, which is me. In terms of my mental health, I wouldn't say I switched up anything necessarily, just trying to read more, trying to, you know, like I said, mindset, working on my perspective. there's a lot going on right now, and I think it's just been good for me to get reconnected with, you know, projects that I've been disconnected from, people I've been disconnected from, and stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, I'm lucky that my partner is a trainer. I feel really spoiled because I don't have to really come up with many exercises, and we box together too, and she does
Nice.
CrossFit. So yeah, we're like doing CrossFit in the alleyway, and people like drive by and honk at us. And like our neighbors have been coming over, and they're like, "You girls rock!" Like, so it's kind of funny how even people you don't see all the time, now that you're at your house, you're making connections with people. And so we've been talking to all of our neighbors, and like these girls or women are just like, "You guys are so inspiring." And it's just kind of, again, reminds you that, you know, everybody gets stuck in their routines.
So in the meantime, I'd like our viewers to know where and how and if they can donate any, you know, leftover wetsuits or a surfboard or anything monetary if they're able to. How can people connect with Latinx Surf Club and help out a little bit?
Yeah, I think the best way is just to follow us on social media. You know, a lot of people told us that they had tried to start movements like this, but I think we hit a really special moment in time, and that social media is a very acceptable way to connect with lots of people, you know, that have common interests to you. So our Instagram account, Courage Camps. We also have a Facebook group. Then we have the Latinx Surf Club on Instagram as well, and they also have a Facebook group. Connect with us, support us, share our flyers. When we finally have a date, we're taking it one day at a time. Although we are, you know, we're sending very positive vibes to the world. We do have a GoFundMe, and that's actually allowed us to fund a lot of this very expensive process of putting in legal paperwork for nonprofits, starting to round up proper wetsuits, but we do take donations as well. We have a couple people who have given us surfboards and wetsuits, so we hold on to the wetsuits so that the people that come through our camp have a wetsuit and never have to worry. If you have foamies, we'll take foamies that are nice and big. And if you don't have foamies and have hard tops, we've been thinking about ways to give those to the people that have come through our community. So kind of becoming this little hub of supplies and resources, so that if someone says I don't have the money to do it, that no longer becomes a problem.
I love that. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. This has been such an eye-opener and such a learning experience, because I try to do my best with Somos to diversify our audience, our followers, and know that there's different aspects out there of the Latinx community, not just, you know, tacos, joints, and the like. And I think that definitely what you all are doing with this club is definitely going to open up a lot more as you guys keep going and get your nonprofit status. And it's a great thing that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for joining me. Again, that's at Latinx Surf_Club on Instagram. Definitely follow. We're going to get you up to that 1,000. So thank you so much for joining. If you guys have any shout outs, any last words, we really appreciate your time.
No, I just want to say thank you. I mean, and I followed you on your Instagram, and I love all the photos that you post of flowers.
You know what? She's trying to get that positive aesthetic.
Yeah, I love it. I've been sharing your stuff. I'm a fan of beautiful roses and things like that.
Yeah, I follow you too. I like it. I think I commented on something. You posted that.
I'm feeling that content.
Yeah, we like your content.